As soon as I saw the Hold Up part of Beyonce's Lemonade album, I fell in love with the dress, so I thought it would be fun to make a summer dress inspired by it. I also made a mini hot sauce bat DIY video. The link for that will be down below. Just so you all know, I am a complete beginner at sewing. I know nothing about patterns and other technical things, so bear with me. This is my first big project on a machine. The picture on the screen right now shows all of the pieces that I cut out and the shape of them and all of the measurements that I used for my body, which, as I explain in more detail later in the video, you can adjust per your body. I will have this on my Facebook page and on my blog so you guys can use it, print it off, whatever you need to do. There's actually only one measurement you need to take from your body, and it's actually really easy to make because every successive layer of the dress is just 2 inches wider than the previous section, so it's really easy to make even though it looks very technical. For fabric, I got 3 yards of this yellow gauze. I know her dress is actually chiffon, it looks like, but I wasn't about to try to pleat chiffon, it just wasn't gonna happen. Then I also got 1 yard of this stretch lace. For some reason, I decided to get the most difficult fabrics to work with as a beginner. I don't know why. And then I have some yellow chiffon. I don't know how much I had because it was just the clearance leftover stuff, so it was probably a little less than 1 yard. I'm going to leave this picture in the description as well because this is explaining the only measurements you're going to have to take from your body and what I did with those measurements. So I'll just leave this playing for a little bit, you can look at it, and then I will explain in more detail as I'm cutting them on the video. For your first front piece, we're going to make that tiny ruffle that's in the front. Measure underneath your bust and subtract 2 inches. For me, that is 32 inches. And then I'm going to measure 3 inches down from that measurement because this ruffle is supposed to be shorter than the rest. And then your bottom measurement will be 2 inches longer than that. So the bottom of this ruffle will be 34 inches for me and 32 inches on the top. I'm cutting on the fold, so I'm only cutting half of the length. That's why it looks like I'm cutting such a short piece here. Then for my next front section, it's going to be lace. I'm going to take that under bust measurement that I got. Mine was 34 minus 2, that's 32. I'm going to divide that by 2, which gives me 16. The top measurement for mine is going to be 16, and then for the bottom, I'm adding 2 inches. I'm cutting on the fold, that's why it looks like I'm only doing 1 inch. And then my sections are going to be 5.5 inches long. Each layer is going to be 5.5 inches long except for the ruffles. Then for the back, measure a piece of elastic that is 1 inch less than that measurement. For me, I got 16, so minus 1 inch is 15 inches. This makes the back of the dress nice and stretchy but doesn't squeeze me extremely tight. And then the piece of lace needs to be 1.5 times that measurement so that it can be the elastic can stretch and ruffle that piece to fit your body. So for me that is 22.5 inches, and again make everything in a trapezoid shape, so plus 2 inches is 24.5 for the bottom length and then 5.5 inches tall. The next layers will now have both lace and chiffon underneath a ruffle. Each new layer has a top length that is the same as the previous layer's bottom length. So my top front layer had a bottom length of 18 inches, which means my next layer will have a top length of 18 inches, and I'll add 2 inches to the bottom to make a trapezoid, and again 5.5 inches long. I'm only adding ruffle layers to the front of the dress, and the ruffle layers are just double the length of the lace and chiffon, and instead of being 5.5 inches tall, they are 7 inches tall. It's the same process for the back layers. The top length of the section will be the same as the bottom of the previous, 5.5 inches tall, and then add 2 inches on the bottom. For my dress's third layer, I decided not to do the chiffon and lace in a trapezoid shape, so I just matched the length of the previous layer and made a rectangle, 5.5 by 20 inches for me, on my lace and my chiffon. I did make the ruffle piece a trapezoid just so it would be more ruffly, so I made it double the lace and chiffon section, 7 inches tall, and then 2 inches more on the bottom. Then just repeat the same thing for the back sections. Now for your fourth layer, just repeat the process, but this time no ruffle, just chiffon and lace. Now we can begin sewing the layers, starting with the back top layer. Find the midpoint of your elastic and match it up with the midpoint of your lace, and then line up the ends. Then you can stretch and sew the elastic to get a stretchy band to go across your back. And thanks to Coolerpa for showing me how to do an elastic stitch in one of her really old videos. She is fantastic. I'll link her video down below to how to do this elastic stitch. Once you have the stitch done, you can then fold it over and stitch over the top again so you have a nice hem. Once you're finished with that, it should look something like this. Now we can move back to the front top layer. You're going to put a hemline on the long portion of your gauze piece. And again, since I'm a noob, I can't do that whole fold it over twice thing and sew it all neatly. Then you're going to do a wide straight stitch all the way along the top. That way you can gather it to the length of your lace. So just continue to gather the piece until it matches up to the length of your top lace piece. For me, that was 16 inches. Then you can line it up and sew across the top. Once you have it done, it should look adorable like this. And you should now have your top, front, and back sections done. For your next front layer, just stitch together your chiffon and lace, and then gather your gauze again just like the previous one and stitch it together. This section of gauze will be longer than the lace and chiffon section, but that's because we want it to be long and flowy, not like the top layer, which is supposed to expose the lace. So here you can see how much longer it is than the chiffon and lace. And then just repeat the same thing for the back, just minus the what is it called? The gauze layer. So I'm just stitching together my chiffon and lace for my back section. And at this point, this is what you should have. Continue to do the same thing for each of the other layers, and you should now have this. Now before we start stitching those pieces together, let's move on to the chest piece, which this is actually hard to explain because I literally threw it together, no rhyme or reason, and it worked. I wanted to be able to double the fabric over so I wouldn't need a bra, or could even sew in some of those bathing suit padding things if I wanted. I guesstimated a length to go underneath each of my boobies so that when I gathered it a little bit, it would still fit the front of my dress. I used 12 inches. Then I measured how high up my chest I wanted it, and for me that was about 8 inches. I times that by 2 so that I could make 2 layers, and then added 3 inches for luck, literally. And it worked out. So my rectangles were 12 by 19. I cut those out on the fold. I placed the 2 sections together, folded in half. Then I measured 2.5 inches up from the open edges. Make sure it's from the open edges, not the folded edges. And then I measured about 4.5 inches along the folded edge. Again, I was guessing here how much I would need, and then I cut out that triangle. Hem along the triangle edge and the long edge, then fold the piece in half. And this is the piece that you're going to use. At this point you could actually sew in some of those bathing suit pieces, but I just ended up not doing that, so I just left mine folded in half. And then fold over and stitch along the top, but fold it down about 1 inch, and you want to leave an opening there. You want to have a tube so that you can send a strap through it to go around your neck like a bathing suit. Once that is done on both of the pieces, make sure you did them on opposite sides on both of them. Measure out small pieces of elastic that you can gather underneath your boobies, but not all the way down to the bottom, because we're also going to create another tube at the bottom for another strap to go around your back and tie in a cute little bow. It's the same stitching technique as before. Sew the middle and then stretch and sew along the elastic. And then at this point you should have all these pieces and possibly a cat screaming at you. Not sure. She chunky. Now you can line up your top layer with the chest pieces and then flip that layer over. I actually matched the middle of the top layer to the middle of the two booby pieces, and I crisscrossed those sections in the middle so that it would look a little cooler once it was done, and you'll see it after I sew it. See, now you can see how one of the chest pieces sort of overlaps the other piece, and I think it just looks nice, neater, more professional. And then you can continue to do the same thing for each of the other layers. Just line up the pieces and flip it over so that the right sides are facing each other. This way you get a neat look without any weirdness, you know what I'm talking about? Professional, yay. So since I am new at sewing and I decided to start out with the most difficult fabrics on the planet, at this point I had to trim off any of the wonky bits that weren't fitting together. Do not trim the gauze pieces. They are supposed to be longer so that they will be more ruffly. Then you can start to line up the front and back pieces, but make sure you line up the gauze pieces as well. You saw how I moved them to the side before I pinned them. Then you can just sew the two pieces together. Then this is something I forgot to do when I did the elastic. You're actually supposed to sew a line from the elastic all the way to the corner of the chest piece to create that tube I was talking about that will send a string around your back. And then after that, you can fold up that bottom part of the chest piece and stretch and sew it to the elastic that goes to the back piece. Unless your chest pieces aren't long enough that they are exposed onto the back side, then it's okay. Just sew it on and leave it and you're good to go. But I had extra little bits, so I had to sew them down to the back piece. Then I tried on the dress to make sure it fit and measured how much longer I would need it to be to cover my bootay. I measured the front and the back sections of the bottom layer, and then I was supposed to double each of those measurements to make gathered ruffled with all of the fabrics, but I only had enough to do it with the gauze. I didn't have enough to double either, so I just made them as long as possible. For the back section, make sure that you make the butt portion longer than the front. This way, if your booty is very round, it will not like make the dress pop up. So you can see I did my normal 7-inch section, but I made it longer on the bottom. Then just like the other ruffles, hem the bottom and then do a wide straight stitch to gather the ruffles until they are the appropriate length for the front and the back of the dress. Now just line them up and flip them over and sew them to the bottom of the dress. Now sew the side seams together of your bottom ruffles. And now for the sleeves, measure 2 pieces of elastic that sit comfortably around your arm, and then measure a gauze piece that is double that length in a trapezoid shape just like your dress. And you can make the sleeves as long as you want. I can't actually remember how long I did mine. I probably did them 7 inches just like the dress. And then same kind of elastic stitch, match up the midpoint and the end points, and then stretch and sew till you get a nice stretchy hem, and then flip it over to hem it so it's a nice edge. Then hem the bottom edges of your sleeves, and then you can then you can sew together the side seams. Match up the side seam of the dress to the side seam of the sleeves. Bring them up to the side boob/armpit area and sew a small section together down towards that point. Make sure you stretch. I realized later that that was actually not very comfortable and would be better added to a strap, but I have yet to fix it. I'm using this cord that I got at Walmart for the straps. Measure a piece that can tie around your rib cage into a bow, and then using a safety pin you can pull it through those tubes that were created under the bust. You can see it sort of wiggles around, so I stitched a small bit near the string so I could keep the appearance of a keyhole. Do not sew the string. Do not. Because if you do, then it won't be able to move. You still need the string to be able to move so that you can adjust it to your size. Then with another tiny piece of the cord, I sewed together the top of the chest pieces to make sure that my boobies never flew out and the top didn't scrunch up way too much. So this time I did actually sew on the string. This is to keep the sections together. Unless you want your boobies to hang out like hers did, because she's all sexy. You know, titties. And this is what your boobie parts should now look like. They should be connected perfectly. And then you need to make 2 pieces of string that will fit around your neck like a bathing suit, so you need to be able to tie them. I actually made mine too short, but that's another story. Then just cut those pieces and using a safety pin, send them through the corresponding boobie tube. And that is actually it. When I tied them around my neck, I actually crisscrossed the 2 middle pieces, and it ended up looking a lot like hers. So that is the final dress. Again, if you want to see how I made the bat, there's a link down below and possibly on the screen at the end of this video. I worked extremely hard on these last 2 videos, so it would mean the world to me if you guys could please give it a like and a share it with your friends, your mom, your grandma, anybody, or just comment down below what you thought, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe and follow me on all of my social media. All of them are linked down below, or you can just find me at LinzMushel everywhere. It's all the same, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye!